Welcome. This is Scarlet and Rage podcast, and we are glad to be coming back to you this Friday morning. When you get this, we are recording this late Thursday night. We did have an extra bonus episode this week, which got some pretty good feedback and some pretty good interaction. And so we had some very nice comments. Like, one person said, "This is the one podcast that you can go to and hear the truth." And so I appreciate that. That's certainly what we're trying to do. We're trying to just give it as unbiasedly as we can. I mean, we are Ohio State fans, so we may be a little biased in some directions or the other, but we try to be objective about things and just kind of call it like it is. And if it's not good, it's not good. If it's good, it's good. But thank you, all of you who are commenting, watching, and please like and subscribe this video if you have not already. We would certainly appreciate that. We appreciate you to like it, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you can be alerted every time we come up with a new episode, so that when we release a bonus episode like we did this morning, you'll be alerted that it's out. And if you're interested in that particular title or subject, it's something you'll have a chance to check out. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate all of you who are watching. And I am looking forward to this Rose Bowl preview of the Michigan Wolverines versus the Alabama Crimson Tide. What a epic matchup of college football tradition and power. And so it's I'm looking forward to the game, and I'm looking forward to this preview. Jay, what how do you want to start out? Your thoughts on this matchup between the mighty Michigan Wolverines and the unstoppable Alabama Crimson Tide.
Well, let's hope Alabama's not unstoppable. Let's hope they're not. It's not looking good though. But anywho, starting off, Michael, about this game, let's talk about its importance for the Big Ten. Obviously, we've said in the past that we're an Ohio State first podcast, but we love the Big Ten and we want the Big Ten to succeed, because if the Big Ten succeeds, Ohio State's only going to get better. Champions of the Big Ten versus champions of the SEC. Not much else to say there. The SEC has absolutely owned the Big Ten, and especially Michigan as of late on the field. The Big Ten is looked at as a slow conference, and for the most part, that is true. The conference hasn't had the most explosive pass games or length and speed in their front sevens defensively. Yesterday on National Signing Day, it's a clear reason on why we on this podcast are cheering for Michigan to win. The SEC absolutely cleans up the leftover 5 stars on National Signing Day. Why is that? And then how is a team like Auburn with a 6-6 record able to accrue a top 5 class? Like SEC is why. Pretty disgusting that other Ohio State centric podcasts are cheering on a fellow Big Ten team to get blown out, Michael. It only makes Ohio State look much worse. It really does.
Yeah, I don't, I get it. There's a bit of rivalry between Ohio State and Michigan. I understand all of that, obviously. But at the end of the day, if you do love Ohio State, and if you are an Ohio State fan, even if you have to hold your nose and do it, you're going to pull for Michigan, because that team just beat you. That team just beat you. So whether you like it or not, they just beat you for a third year in a row. And unfortunately, they are the standard bearer for the conference. And if they go and get beat by Alabama 28-17 or 31-20 or something like that, or possibly even worse, what does that say about Ohio State? It doesn't say anything good. If Michigan goes out and they win this game, it makes that Michigan loss, like it or not, sting a little bit less, because it's like, this was a team that took down Nick Saban and Alabama. I feel a little better about losing that game than I did back the last weekend in November. So that's my thoughts on it, Jay.
Yeah. And again, with the SEC, they just win, man. There's nothing more to say. They win these games. They win when it matters most. And high school players, even if they aren't going to play for the best, i.e., Alabama and Georgia, they want to play against the best. So
Hmm.
it's much easier to recruit in a conference for that reason.
Hmm.
The SEC has not lost a college football playoff game out of conference game since 2018, and that was to Clemson, who is they're more or less an SEC team considering their location.
Right.
So big game. I mean, there's really nothing else we can say here. I think the last time Michigan actually beat Alabama was in the 2000 Orange Bowl with Tom Brady, like the greatest of all time. Michael, remember
Yeah.
that game?
Oh, I remember that game very well.
Mhm.
Tom led them to a fourth quarter comeback. They were down 28-14, and he
Oh
led
wow,
them.
you do remember that well.
Yeah, yeah, and he led them back, and they won. I believe it was overtime. I think it was the end of the first overtime, and Alabama missed the extra point, and Michigan walked away the Orange Bowl champion after Alabama shanked the extra point. So yeah, I remember that game very, very well. And
Mhm.
at that time, I was very, very glad to see Michigan beat the SEC team. Because at that
Yeah,
time, that was Big Ten champ versus SEC champ, if I remember correctly. Maybe
yeah, I think so.
maybe Alabama didn't win it that year, but they won it somewhere in the late 90s. But
They
anyhow,
did win. They did win. I
okay.
believe I'm almost positive they won the
Yeah.
SEC that year. They weren't obviously as good as they are now.
No,
And
no.
maybe Michigan was, I don't know. They were better at the skill positions back
Yep.
then. Michigan definitely was with
Yep.
David Terrell and I forget what other receivers they had.
That
Um,
was the peak of that little Alabama run, which wasn't much. They went from being terrible to they won the SEC one year, and then it just kind of went right back down after that. And Mike
mhm.
DuBose ended up getting fired for an affair.
Yeah. Oh, is that what
Yeah,
happened?
yeah, yeah.
An affair. They basically wouldn't have
Right,
cared if they were winning, though.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, Michigan fans, I just want to point out, I know Tom Brady is the greatest of all time, but I just want to say that I think your most talented quarterback of all time is Drew Henson. Do you
Yeah.
remember Drew Henson?
Oh, absolutely. It completely his entire career is intertwined with Tom Brady. I
Yeah.
mean, Drew Henson is forever known as the kid that had it all, the five-star talent, the $1 million draft pick by the New York Yankees coming into Michigan to be boy wonder, only to lose the job to this guy that nobody really gave a shit about named Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And Brady goes on to become the greatest quarterback ever. So, I mean, Brady's got my respect.
No, absolutely.
Some Ohio State fans, they want to act like they hate on Tom Brady. I'm like, whatever. He's the greatest. I respect the heck out of him. He was a fun player to watch. He was a competitor to the core.
Oh, yeah. Tom Brady
Yeah.
was, he had the Jordan mentality. He really
Yep.
did. When it comes to Drew Henson, though, it makes you wonder, had he not taken the baseball route and he just stayed with football, would he have been a great quarterback in the NFL? I think he would have been because he
Probably
took
so.
like,
I mean,
yeah.
he came back after some years off and played for the Dallas Cowboys.
Hmm.
Now he was not. It didn't take. He didn't settle in and win a long term job in the NFL. But
Yeah.
yeah, and he was a very talented guy, almost too talented. It's like he couldn't focus on any one thing because he was so good at football, baseball, and basketball.
Well, my first Ohio State Michigan game ever I attended was 2000 in Ohio Stadium. I'm actually looking at the portrait right now. It's like sitting on my floor. It's like right in front of me.
Mhm.
2000 Ohio State Michigan game, and that was the game Drew Henson led Michigan into Columbus. They beat Ohio State 38-26. I remember sitting next to my dad, and again, I'm really a young like kid at the time, and I didn't
Mhm.
really know football that well back then. And Drew Henson would just drop back like 6 or 7 yards and just launch it, and, like, my dad's reaction is like, "Wow, that was amazing."
Yeah,
Like, my dad has seen, like, John Elway in that stadium, and he remembered faintly, but he said, like, Henson's arm was right there with, like, John Elway, maybe even
yeah,
better. It's, like, the greatest arm he's ever seen, and Henson
yeah,
was no stiff, he could run.
yeah,
So yeah, man.
yeah.
I think he was the most talented quarterback in Michigan history, but he
Yeah.
wasn't the best, but I think he
No,
was
yeah,
the most talented.
yeah.
So
Extremely talented guy.
now that that is all out of the way,
Mhm.
we need to understand what is Michigan up against and what do they need to do to win. So let's try and understand our enemy as a conference here, because yes, Michigan, you are the flag bearer. We're in this with you in the Rose Bowl. And starting off, Alabama is led by redshirt sophomore quarterback Jalen Milroe. He is a load at 6'2", 220, and while he's not a burner speed wise, he does still have good speed. He's not
Yeah.
the best passer in the world, but if you give him time, he will beat you with the deep ball.
He's
Yeah,
very
go ahead.
athletic out off the edge.
Yeah, man, he is very
Yeah.
athletic. It's just it's weird. He's definitely really big and really strong, but he is
Mhm.
absolutely athletic for sure.
Yeah.
He's not Jaden Daniels. Jaden
No.
Daniels is something else. But
No.
Jalen Milroe's very good.
Mhm.
Um, at running back, you have Jace McClellan. He's the Tide starter, but he did suffer an injury in the Iron Bowl, Michael. He
Yeah.
did not play against Georgia. So his status, and I just looked this up, Nick Saban addressed this a couple days ago. It's kind of up in the air, but let's
Mhm.
assume he's going to play. Roy Dale Williams is a good backup. He played solid against Georgia and was the starter there.
Mhm.
Um, and then at wide receiver, Alabama doesn't have a lot of size or length at that position, but
No.
what they do have is a lot of speed, led by Isaiah Bond. Bond is a former Buford Wolf from
Yeah,
Buford,
Georgia
Georgia.
transfer?
No, all right. So the Georgia transfer is Jermaine Burton. He's the
Okay.
other big play wide
Yeah.
receiver.
Yeah.
Michigan fans, you should know him well from the Orange Bowl 2 seasons ago.
Yep. Yeah, I think Alabama's wide receivers are nothing spectacular, but I mean, I think they have a little something on Michigan's wide receivers. I think there's a little more there in the Alabama wide receiver room than Michigan has as far as wide receiver threats.
I don't. I would say that all of their receivers are honestly like Roman Wilson, but the thing is, Roman Wilson is Michigan's probably their best receiver,
Right.
and they have like three of them. Now,
Right.
Cornelius Johnson, we know he shredded Ohio State in 2022. He hasn't had quite the same season this year, but I mean, I do know he's big and talented. He's bigger than any receiver Alabama has, so
Right.
I don't know. I guess that's a difference there. This is where offense. Well, this is where Alabama is.
Jay, before we move on,
Go ahead.
I do want to say real quickly, I think that I think that Milroe is Michigan's opportunity in this game. If they can force him into some bad decisions, which he can be prone to, he can be prone to making some bad throws. If he doesn't make mistakes, he's hard to beat. But if you can get him to make a couple of mistakes, make a bad throw or two, get a couple of turnovers, that's where Michigan would really have an opportunity to potentially, in my mind, upset Alabama, because I think it would be an upset for Michigan to beat Alabama. I don't anybody that says otherwise, I
Yeah,
think
it
is
is.
kidding
It's
themselves.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to disagree with you there. On the offensive line, they are actually kind of young in age and experience, but they do not lack on talent.
Mhm.
Caden Proctor and J.C. Latham are both two former five-star offensive tackles from the Midwest, and they are very big on the interior as well. This
Isn't
is a
that beautiful, Jay, that Alabama has 2 five-star offensive tackles from the Midwest?
makes me
Isn't
want to
that great?
gag.
Isn't that great? Isn't that
Well,
fantastic?
when the SEC wins and Alabama wins, this is what happens.
Yeah, I mean, people want to talk about the Midwest not having enough talent, and I understand that it's not as talent rich as the South, but the talent that is there, which it's there's still significant talent sprinkled across the Midwest. The talent that is there, you can't let it go to Alabama and Miami. You have
Hell
to
no.
keep it. You have to keep it. So anyhow,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And then look at New Jersey area. Like a
hmm
couple of their offensive linemen are going to freaking Georgia. Like,
yep,
why? What is
yep.
appealing from a kid from New Jersey to go to Georgia? I don't
And
get it.
what's interesting is those guys are ranked high, like 92, 93, but they're
Mhm.
not ranked as high as some guys in Kirby's own backyard that for whatever reason he's less interested in. So that's interesting that he went after lower rated guys out of the state of New Jersey
Mhm.
as opposed to higher rated guys out of the state of Georgia.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, they've like Georgia's become a national recruiting program, though. I
Mhm.
mean, there's really nothing else to be said about that. I saw like the top 15 guys in the state of Georgia. Only one of them's going to Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people want to say this stuff about Kirby Smart and say he's got all this talent in state, and that that's why he's good. He does have a lot of talent in state, but he doesn't get most of the top 15 players in the state every year. He gets a few of them, so he's not like so advantaged as we like to act like, because there's so much competition coming into the state of Georgia.
Yeah, well, Gwinnett County, Fulton
Hmm.
County, just like here in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, people are from everywhere else but
Yeah,
here, you
right.
know, and they don't grow up with an affinity or, to the Georgia Bulldogs. But I
Yep.
tell you what, who is cleaning up in the state of Georgia is Alabama because Buford's become a pipeline for them.
Yeah.
I mean, so much so that they almost flipped Edric Houston yesterday. But
Yeah.
anywho, this Bama offensive line was able to drive Georgia back on some key short yardage situations and pick
Yeah.
them up. This will be the best offensive line Michigan has faced all season. It's not even close. Not even
They
close.
won the battle up front against Georgia, flat
Yes, they
out.
did. I had to before we did this podcast, I made sure everybody that I studied Alabama as, I really watched the Georgia games and the Auburn games because I know like Alabama didn't do so well against Auburn. They were lucky to win, very lucky to win, but you have to take them at their best in this game because it's Nick Saban. They're going to play their best in this game. You can't take them like struggling against South Florida the second game of the year.
No.
That game's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Struggling against Texas, and you can't go off that one either.
No. That Alabama team's gone.
Oh yeah, they're
Yeah.
gone.
This is a
And
new monster. This is what Nick Saban does. He builds monsters as the season goes, and his teams are peaking at the right time. He's the best at this. He's done it. I mean, it's why the guy, yeah, he's got a little bit of luck. He got a terrible Notre Dame team that he got fed, that got fed to him for an easy national championship.
mhm.
He had Colt McCoy go out on the first drive of the series against Texas, and that was kind of an easy national championship. So he's had some luck, but he's also won 4 others besides those 2. So he's doing some things right too, and that's one of the things that he's always been good at, is getting his teams to peak at the right time. And Michigan, you guys are getting a Bama that's at its peak. So you're going to have to stop the heavyweight champ when the heavyweight champ is kind of at its best.
Oh yeah, well, it's hard to win a national championship,
Hmm.
so it is what it is. Um, Man, so defensively on the line, they are big. Jaheim Otis goes 6'5", 320. I believe he's like their 3 technique, and then Tim Keenan is 6'2", 315. Just big athletic defensive tackles you only see in the SEC. Michael,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've studied the other Big Ten teams well. Are there any other Big Ten teams with like a duo of defensive tackles that big? Michigan, I think, is the only one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, no, I don't believe so.
Yeah, Ohio
Um,
State doesn't. I know that.
no, and there's no other team we played. I mean, if there is 2 guys that are big like that, they're not this good. They're
Mhm.
just big guys that are not as good, because these guys are they're tough to deal with. They're tough to deal with up front. I mean, I saw that in the Georgia game. They
Oh, yeah.
they they are tough to deal with up front.
Speaking of players you only see in the SEC are guys like Deontay Lawson, and I believe he might be their leading tackler. If he's not, it might be like one of their safeties. But Deontay Lawson is a long, rangy linebacker with
Mhm,
very good speed. This is
mhm.
the type of player you don't see on a Big Ten roster. The same goes for outside linebacker, but more of a defensive end in Dallas Turner.
Yeah.
Turner from Atlanta area, Georgia, is explosive, fast, and better at getting to the quarterback
Mhm.
than the Penn State defensive ends that Michigan played against, a couple months ago,
And
and we know how that went.
Alabama still runs that 3-4 basically.
They do run a
Sometimes, yeah.
3-4.
Mhm.
Mhm. So it's like their linebackers, for instance, like sometimes they show a 4-man front, but
Mhm.
the outside guy is standing up, so he's coming down from his linebacker
Right.
position. I mean, I'm not a particularly a big fan of the 3-4, Michael, because you just need like the absolute perfect personnel to run it, which
Hmm.
Alabama does. They
Hmm.
can run it, but a team like Ohio State that has a hard time getting that kind of talent, it's harder to run. Michigan, it's harder to run. They don't get the same big. You got to have big nose tackles to run something like that.
Yeah, you do. You do. Those three down linemen got to be. You got to have some beef.
Hmm. Um, Secondary, and this is where I think Alabama could be vulnerable. I'm not sure enough, but
Hmm.
it is the secondary. Even though JaQuincy McKinstry, yeah, I think it's Kool-Aid McKinstry is his nickname.
Well, Jay, that's not Michigan's strong suit to
Exactly.
exploit
Yeah.
a secondary because they ran the ball 62% of the time this season. So
Mm,
they only pass the ball 38% of the time on average. And so, I mean, if they up that to 45%, I mean, I can't see him, coming out and throwing the ball 50-50. I mean, they are
mhm.
who they are. They're going to run the ball 60% of the time.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Mhm,
McKinstry is probably the best corner in the SEC.
mhm.
Um, and their secondary lacks some length overall, so maybe Michigan can win some jump balls with Cornelius Johnson.
Yeah.
We also know that Alabama, one of their starting safeties is Caleb Downs, and he's had a very good season for them in the end.
Mhm.
Former number one safety in the country came down to Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia. Man, I know Ohio State. I still wish we had Caleb Downs, man, but we made a mention of it a couple weeks ago. Would Caleb Downs be starting for Ohio State? I don't think he would.
Yeah. Yeah. Meaning that whether he was good enough or not, they just don't seem to play freshmen in starting roles, very, very seldom.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I mean, we just broke down Alabama's roster and personnel as much as we could. So going with that, Michael, we can start with you. In your opinion, what does Michigan need to do to win this game against everything that we've gone over with Alabama? What they are, what they do, who they're coached by. What comes to your mind first and
Well, I
foremost?
think they have, like I said, I don't, I'm going to say this outright. And if Michigan surprises me, if Michigan proves me wrong, I'll be happy. Okay.
Hmm.
I'll be more than happy. I don't think they can win this game without at least two turnovers. I really don't. I think
Hmm.
they need two turnovers to win this game. So that's something that's not like totally in your control. I mean, you can try to scheme and confuse the quarterback, and that can contribute to turnovers. You know, but I think they need a couple of turnovers and I think that they need to get a short field or two because they are going to be strength against strength. Their offensive line versus the Bama defense, and they're going to be going right at them. And I really feel like this is the type of offense that Alabama defense does really, really well against. That this isn't the type of offense that, keeps Nick Saban up at night. Like this is the type of offense that his defense is built to really, really give a hard time. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much offensive production they can get. I think they're going to have to try to throw the ball. I do think they're going to have to try to keep
Yeah.
Alabama honest and throw the ball. Maybe more than they have during some of their games. I mean, we'll find out in the first half. I mean, if they're not able to run the ball and if they're not getting things going, then it's going to be tough sledding for Michigan. If Michigan can start running the ball and getting a little bit going and running some play action and mixing in the pass, who knows?
Hmm.
It's a game that they could win. But I think that they're going to have a great game plan execution, and I do think they're going to have to get a little help by creating some turnovers.
Yeah, I agree with all that, Michael. I've broken down what Michigan needs to do in my personal notes offensively and defensively. So,
Mhm.
offensive side of the ball, in my opinion, I believe JJ McCarthy is a better overall quarterback than Jalen Milrow. But the
Yeah.
thing is, Alabama has better talent overall on offense, and but McCarthy is a very smart player with a good arm. If I'm starting a team, I'm taking JJ over Jalen.
Mhm.
But it's close, but I'm
Mhm.
taking JJ because he just throws better overall.
Yeah.
Um, it goes without saying that they are going to need to run the ball and find a way somehow with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. I don't expect many explosive runs because Alabama schematically is going to run blitz the shit out of
Yeah.
them, like
Yep.
you said. Um,
They're not
and
going to sit back the way Ohio State did and just play a straight up defense. Like,
now,
you know,
right. So
yeah.
when it comes to running the ball, the Alabama Auburn game, Auburn had some success running spread option, but Michigan doesn't really do that.
No.
So that's where this is where I'm concerned. It's like Auburn ran a lot of spread option. Their running backs seem, I mean, maybe not more so than Donovan Edwards, but they seem maybe a little faster than Blake Corum. It's hard to tell. But they were gashing Alabama because the quarterback was always a threat to run. And I wonder, I know JJ McCarthy is a kind of a thinner guy. He's not that big, but like neither is Peyton Thorne from Auburn. And he was really stressing Alabama out with like the quarterback runs and stuff. So does Michigan like change up their game plan and go more spread option in this game? They're gonna have to throw the kitchen sink. Actually, they're gonna have to throw the house at Alabama offensively to be able to score some points here because schematically they're not designed to score points on Alabama. You already mentioned that.
Yep.
Maybe so Michigan has that backup quarterback, Alex Orji. He played some against Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Big thoroughbred dude.
Yeah.
I think he's the key. If Michigan is going to like move the ball
Yeah.
consistently, I think he's going to have to play 25% of the snaps and at least give Michigan some spread option or give Alabama some spread option looks from Michigan so they can get Alabama like not so condensed on the inside, spread them out and use your athletes and be able to use Alex Orji. The guy's a beast.
Yeah, that's a good
He's
point. Like
big and fast.
A Jalen Hurts type of deal, a big physical runner,
Mhm.
and use him to spread it out. He's probably a more physical runner than Jalen Hurts, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be something that would be interesting to
Yeah,
see if
yeah.
they could gain some traction with those kind of packages.
So I'm trying to look up like Alex Orji's like measurables here. I'm curious how big he is. And he is exactly 6'3", 230, man. So he's a monster.
Yeah,
He's like freaking Derrick Henry out there in
yeah,
size wise. So he's like basically a big running back playing quarterback. We
yeah.
haven't seen him throw. I mean, I haven't seen him throw. Michigan fans, you probably have. I haven't. Speaking of throwing, Michigan's going to have a hard time passing the ball because
Mm,
I don't see their offensive tackles holding up in pass protection against Alabama's blitzing or
yeah,
Dallas Turner. If they
yeah.
can't block Penn State, I don't think they're going to block Alabama. So I don't know, Michael. What do you think?
Yeah, I haven't. That's an area that I haven't paid enough attention to with Alabama, so I don't know how well they get after the quarterback. I mean, obviously, Ohio State has a good defensive line, but we know that they don't get to the quarterback. I mean, we know
Mm.
that, and so we didn't show any real threat to the Michigan offensive line that I can remember. I mean, I don't remember us, getting too much pressure at
Mhm.
all. So Penn State did much better getting pressure than we did because they have that speed off of the edge.
Yeah,
And so I don't know if Alabama has that or not. I haven't paid close enough attention to that
they
specific
do.
part of
They
their
do.
defense. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, if they do, then it's certainly going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, Alabama always has, fast players.
Yeah, they do, especially at linebacker. I mean, the linebacker position, they have their speed there is just it's more so than any team in the Big Ten, and
Yep.
it's hard for Michigan to prepare for that because the Big Ten is so bad.
Yeah.
This is why we want the Big Ten to be good, so you can be prepared for a game like this. But
Yep.
if Michigan does, if they are able to block Alabama, and they do, and they are able to pass. I think I mean, this goes without saying, but the person they're going to have to throw to the most is Colston Loveland. Um, he is their best overall pass catching threat between both teams. In my opinion, I think Colston Loveland is the best pass
Tight
catching threat.
end.
The tight end,
Yeah.
yes,
Right.
he's very good. He's big, fast, very good hands.
Yeah.
He's the key to getting open against Alabama and gashing their linebackers in coverage. Personally,
Mm. Good point. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
he's certainly a weapon that they're going to have to utilize.
Absolutely, and I think he's the best. I think he was the best tight end in the Big Ten. He's the best tight end between both of these teams. So Yeah, I mean, I would say he's, Alex Orji and Colson Loveland. I guess Alex Orji is kind of like the dark horse weapon, but Colson
Yeah.
Loveland's not.
You imagine that Harbaugh is going to have some type of trick play in the back pocket somewhere along the way, and looking for a convenient time to try
Hmm.
and pull it out. The way that he did with Ohio State. And so I would be expecting that too. What will
I
it
hope
be?
so.
Yeah, yeah,
I hope so because Harbaugh's been, I don't know, in these big games and stuff. He hasn't. I mean, like big games against teams other than Ohio State and
yeah.
I guess the rest of the Big Ten. He hasn't done so well. Um,
No,
on
he's
yeah,
not.
on defense, in my opinion, Michigan is going to need to take their chances. Um, and bring pressure.
Mhm.
Even though Milrow is elusive, you cannot. But the thing is, you cannot let him sit back there and have all the time in the world, only rushing 3 or 4. Georgia did that, and Alabama. It's not like they moved the ball up and down the field, but like, do we really think Michigan has as much talent on defense as Georgia does?
Probably not, but they could potentially have a better pass rush
Yeah,
because Georgia did not get after quarterbacks this year.
yeah.
They were not as poor as Ohio State, but they were not a typical Georgia defense as far as getting sacks. That was way down this year.
Hmm. So
Yeah,
Bama's offensive line is just too good to only rush 3 or 4, in my
yeah,
opinion. I mean, if you only rush that many guys, and I know Michigan has a good defensive line, but at the same time, it's just like you can have a good defensive line, but Alabama's offensive line is probably the best in the country. Probably,
mhm,
I don't see an offensive line better than them. Um, Rushing 3 or 4 is just a death sentence against a mobile quarterback. He's going to scramble around, break you
yeah,
down, and that's where the deep throws are going to come from.
yeah. I mean,
You
you
can't
got to
let
get them behind the chain some. They can't they just can't play forward football, and you continue to have sustained success. You got to have those backwards plays, one way
right.
or the other.
Yeah, you're gonna have to create negative plays, and if you get Alabama in a 4th and 25, like desperation situation, yeah, you can't just rush 3 there as
Right,
well.
right. Yeah. So,
So, continuing on, if I were Michigan, this is very, very daring, and Michigan fans, you tell me if I'm crazy, but honestly, if I were Michigan and I were Jim Harbaugh and I were Jesse Minter and those defensive coaches, I would look Will Johnson and Mike Sainristil in the
mhm,
face and say, "You guys are the best corner duo in the country,
mhm,
and now it's time to show it."
mm,
Personally,
yeah,
with me, with how good Michigan's secondary is, I would play a lot of cover one.
mhm,
I would play a lot of cover zero and mix in a lot of run blitzing to take away Milrow's legs and Alabama's power run and force this guy to throw quick
throw the ball, yeah,
and more intermediate to short routes because
yeah,
when you blitz, you're not
mhm,
going to have time to look down the field.
right,
When you blitz, you're taking away his scrambling as long as you blitz and break down
yeah,
when you tackle. Michigan has to break down and not lose contain on this guy. But when you do blitz, you are going to take away like him being able to scramble around and scramble to throw. And then at the same time, force him to throw where he's not comfortable, and that's
yeah,
with a little more accuracy over the middle. Rod Moore has been one of the most clutch and ball hawking safeties I have seen. So have him in the middle of the field.
mm.
The guy from Ohio, I think he's Northmont. I don't know where Rod Moore's from. Where's he from, Michael? Do you know?
No, I don't.
Okay, I think he might have been from Kurt Coleman School. I can't know for sure, but I don't know. I could be crazy there. So anybody like any of one of our subscribers or people who haven't subscribed and are listening, like let me know like what your thoughts are. That's my opinion. Michael, do you have any thoughts for their defense against Alabama's offense as well?
Uh, uh, Rod Moore is from Northmont.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, I
Yeah,
got it
so
right.
yeah, so Clayton, Ohio.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so I agree with you that you cannot play it safe. You're going to have to bring some pressure.
Hmm.
You're going to have to try to force the issue to get Milroe to pass, because that's his weak spot. The more you can get him to do that, to have to do that, the higher your probability of generating turnovers. The more they can rely on the run game and him have time in the pocket the way that he did against Georgia, he's either going to find a receiver or he's going to find his way out of the pocket.
Right.
And so they've got to take some gambles, and they've got to come after him, and they've got to try to create some havoc. I don't think they can just play this straight up. They need to take a lesson from Ohio State. Ohio State played Michigan straight up all game and got their butts beat, because the Michigan offensive line was just a little better. And so I'm not saying this Alabama offensive line is better, but I'm saying it's darn good, and it's going to start wearing on you by that late in the third quarter. And so, you've got to do what you can to take your shots and get them off schedule.
Yeah, you definitely have to get them off schedule. And when you do get them off schedule, don't rush 3 or 4, because Milroe can run around back there, man. I mean, this game is being played in the Rose Bowl, Michael. I understand it's like, the Big Ten is locked into the Rose Bowl. It was locked into the Rose Bowl, and that was traditional site. Obviously, this is a neutral site game, but I wonder if like Michigan plays better there than Alabama would, because it's just, I don't know. I understand it's like not in Michigan's backyard, but it is a place that their program historically is like familiar with. I understand none of the players have played there, and Jim Harbaugh hasn't coached there, but I think Harbaugh's played in the Rose Bowl.
Probably did.
Yeah,
I mean, that's an interesting theory, because certainly Big Ten programs are at home in the Rose Bowl. I don't know if that translates to a team that's never actually been to the Rose Bowl, but it's certainly a more natural venue for Michigan than it is for Alabama. There have not been many SEC teams play in Rose Bowls, and the only times they have is when it's been forced events like this, where the Rose Bowl has been a national championship game or a playoff game.
Yeah, the only 2 times I can think are Georgia in 2017 and Alabama in 2009, 2010 against Texas. And I will disagree. I would not say like it's like looks at as like a home field for the Big Ten, because obviously we were playing the Pac-10. That's a home field for them.
No.
I mean,
no,
I would say there's
absolutely.
familiarity.
I'm saying out of this matchup, it's a friendly environment to the Big Ten. It's an environment that the SEC rarely goes to. And so maybe that makes no difference at all. Maybe there is a little bit of an impact there. I don't know.
Who do you think is going to have more fans at this game, Alabama or Michigan in that stadium?
That's a good question. Right? I would. I'd probably put my money on Michigan.
I think Michigan too.
Yeah.
I think Michigan too. They have a larger fan base.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to guess, they have a larger fan base out west.
Yeah.
And they're, Michigan is really starving for success, and Alabama's had so much success. So,
Alabama, their fans, many of them will be saying things like this. And I've lived down in, I actually lived in Alabama for a year. And I lived down in Southeast Tennessee.
Where in Alabama were you at?
Birmingham. And so I was also down in Southeast Tennessee, not far from Alabama. And so there was Alabama fans in that area. And so like when Ohio State played them in 2014 on the local radio, the SEC fanboys, they were calling in and they were saying, well, we're not going to waste our time, buying a ticket to the Sugar Bowl to watch them destroy Ohio State. We're going to save our money for the national championship game. And so, I'm sure they're saying some of that with this too, like that there's no way Michigan's going to beat them. Michigan's a slow Big Ten team and it'll never happen. And they're going to just wait for the national championship game and then spend their money going to that. So I think there'll be some of that thought process within the Alabama fan base. And I guess to some degree they've earned that thought process, but it'd be nice to see Michigan, spoil those fans, plans.
Okay. So the next question I have is, which team is under more pressure, Alabama or Michigan, to win this game?
I think Nick Saban is under more pressure.
Nick Saban's under more pressure. Okay.
I do, because he is trying to prove that he can still get it done. The Alabama fan base wanted him gone after the Texas loss. Many were proclaiming that the Saban era was over, that his success had ended, that he was too old, that it was time to move on. And so, Jim Harbaugh, I think he's playing with house money. I mean, I think that obviously a playoff defeat would be it would be a tough blow to the Michigan program, but I honestly think that he will deal with less backlash if he loses than Nick Saban would if he loses. Not that Nick Saban cares, but I just think he's out to prove that he can still get it done.
Okay. I disagree. I think there's more pressure on Michigan because Alabama, they're bringing back a lot next year. We already know that Nick Saban can win. He just won a national championship in the 2020 season. It's only 3 years ago. He has like 5, 6 titles won. Jim Harbaugh hasn't had any such success. He hasn't even won like a New Year's Six BCS game yet. Jim Harbaugh has, he's conquered Ohio State. That's great. Ohio State is not the program. Ohio State's not as good anymore. They're still a good program, but like beating them it is an accomplishment, but it shouldn't be looked at as like the main goal for Michigan. Michigan's got to take that next step and be able to beat like a truly, truly elite team. And that
Mhm.
kind of team is either Georgia or Alabama, or,
Mhm.
maybe in some off years like this year, it's Texas and Washington. But those are the games that Michigan's got to win. And Jim Harbaugh, man, I think, like I've said, he's the best coach in the Big Ten, but you're a big fish in a small pond there. Like the Big Ten is filled with a bunch of garbage coaches. Um, he's got it. He's got to. I don't know. Like, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him because Michigan, they're a very much a senior laden team.
Yeah.
Like, if they don't get it done this year, when are they going to get it done?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they know this. I know they know this. Like,
Mhm.
they're like, we need to get it done this year
Mhm.
because I don't know. I think JJ McCarthy could come back, but I think Blake Corum is probably going to be gone. Donovan
Yep.
Edwards is gone. Roman Wilson is gone. Cornelius Johnson is gone. A lot of guys on defense are gone. I think Will Johnson would come back, but I mean, that is a massive, massive loss of personnel for next year, Michael.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And they've got a big loss going into this game. The big offensive lineman that tore his knee up in the
Zinter.
Ohio State game. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
heard he actually wasn't as good as people are like hyping him up to be. So Michigan fans, why don't you tell us in the comments? Like, I did not study your offensive line. Like, I know you guys have always a really good offensive line, but you let us know if he's as big of a loss as you think. So,
I mean, certainly just like on a small sample size, like when he went out, the offense started doing better. I don't know that that has anything to do with it, or if it was just coincidence, but he's certainly a highly rated guy anyway. That I think that they definitely would like to have on the field, but he's not going to be.
yeah, yeah. So, anywho, just to recap, you know, uh, Jim Harbaugh and Michigan have just been terrible in these games. This is not, again, I said this before Ohio State played Michigan. This is not the type of game that Ryan Day wins. And for Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, this isn't the type of game that they win. They haven't won a bowl game, Michael, since 2015. That is just completely
Mm.
unacceptable if you're a Michigan fan. And yeah, like I said, beating Ohio State is, that's great for them, but that's becoming less and less of an accomplishment as the years go on, and
Yeah.
Harbaugh needs to do better and figure it out.
So, what do you think the score is going to be? How you think this is going to shape up?
You want my score first, or you want to go first?
I don't care. I've gone first all year, so I mean, I can go first if you
Yeah, I
want.
think you should go first.
All right.
Yeah,
So, I really want to pick Michigan. I want to see some things go their way. I want to see them get a couple of turnovers, execute their game plan. I love to see a 24-20 or a 27-23 or 27-25 Michigan win or something like that. But I think it can happen. Okay. I don't think it's the most likely to happen. I think the most likely thing to happen is to pick Alabama to win this game 24-19.
very, very interesting score there.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Man, I've gone over this game backwards and forwards, and I was looking for ways that Michigan could win, Alabama could win, and the thing I've come through the most is that while JJ McCarthy is the best quarterback in this game, Alabama's offensive line is just probably the best unit in this game,
Mhm.
and I would like to think in a perfect world Michigan would be blitzing like hell and calling like spread option with Alex Orgy and JJ
Yep.
McCarthy all game. And if they did that, absolutely, I would absolutely pick them to win. But in my mind, I'm like, Harbaugh, like the evidence is not there for him to coach a really good game, aggressive game plan in something like this. And I think Alabama is going to pull it out like 27-17, and
Okay.
Michigan's offense going to have a really, really hard time. I mean, they had a
Yeah.
hard time against Iowa, man. The
Yeah.
only reason they won that game decisively as they did is because Iowa's offense is probably the worst offensive in the country, worst
Yep.
offense in the country. And
Yep.
eventually Michigan's, Iowa's defense got tired and Michigan was able to pull away, but they're not
Mhm.
going to be able to do that against Alabama. Alabama has like equal defense to Iowa with more talent, and it's
Yeah.
like I have a hard time believing Michigan's I just don't see how they could get to 21, man. It's gonna be really, really, really hard. I think
Yeah.
Michigan's defense will fight valiantly. Victor's
Right.
valiant for their defense, but
Right.
you have to be good on every level of football, man, to
Yep.
win a championship, and Michigan's offense just hasn't shown me they can score points against a defense like Alabama. So I'm
Well,
going with Alabama, 27-17.
I agree. Well, so I mean, we're both, you've got a little bigger spread of victory, but both of us have Michigan scoring under 20 points because I just have a hard time seeing them getting over 20. And I don't think that their defense is going to be able to shut Alabama down to like
Yeah.
17. So, hey, Michigan fans, if you guys pull it off, have fun, blast us in the comments, tell us we didn't believe in you guys. We'll be glad to accept the insults because
Hey, man, we want Michigan to win.
we will be celebrating a Big Ten victory over the SEC and a Big Ten advancement into the
Hell
national
yeah.
championship game. So that's our hope. But, logically, that was our pick. We see Alabama getting out of Pasadena with a win. So, Jay, that's really all that I've got to talk about as far as this. Do you got
Yeah,
anything to add?
I don't really have much to add. I think we've gone over this game as much as we can because it is like, this was just a single game episode. We didn't really talk about anything else.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me happy to pick Alabama, people. I
No,
hope you
no,
understand
no.
that. I mean, I
I'm picking
really am.
Alabama, but I'm rooting for Michigan. I am
Oh,
going to
hell
be,
yeah, I hope I'm
yeah,
wrong. I'm not gonna be
yeah,
like some of these other Ohio State sites and, laugh at Michigan and say, "Oh, I'm just gonna cheer on them getting blown out, this, that, and the other." Hell no, I hope Michigan blows Alabama out. That would be great.
yep,
But
absolutely.
Michigan's not designed to beat a team like Alabama, and I don't know. It's just it's sad to pick against the Big Ten, but, Michigan hasn't proven to win these games, and,
Yeah.
they need to recruit better, and I will say this, I think Washington in the other game is gonna beat Texas.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna say that right now.
Okay. Well, I'll be excited to watch it, and
Oh yeah, I'll be tuned in.
also be excited to do our next episode on the Cotton Bowl as we do a preview for Ohio State
Mhm.
versus Missouri. So hope you guys enjoyed this one and be looking for that one coming out real soon. All right. Appreciate you listening, tuning in, and we'll be back with another episode in the near future.
Yep. Go
Bye.
Big Ten.